I'm Kerry Shale.
And I'm Daniel Crespin.
And this is Bob Dylan.
Approximately.
So it begins, "Oh, the time will come up when the winds will stop and the breeze will cease to be breathing, like the stillness in the wind before the hurricane begins, the hour that the ship comes in." I can't remember where I first heard it. When did that come out?
It came out in 64, was it?
64, yeah,
but I
yeah.
think he wrote it in 63.
Right.
Because I know he
changing,
first performed it, I think, in 63.
Mm-hmm.
I would probably have been introduced to it in a classroom at school at a meeting of the Folk Club, the Folk Appreciation Society of Queen Elizabeth Grammar School, Wakefield, 1964. And this was run by some rather superior sixth formers. I can well remember Richard Hughes, the guy who was kind of in charge of it. And he had, I think at that stage, there were only 3 Bob Dylan, maybe 4 Bob Dylan albums. And so it was a recital. It was billed as a recital. And me and my mate, Dave.
A recital, what? Even though they're just going to be playing a record?
Absolutely.
Brilliant.
But listen,
Fabulous.
Access to a record.
That's a very folky thing to do.
No, but it's also a very 60s thing to do. You know, don't forget, this is, you know, if you read
prehistoric times,
if you read Mark
basically.
Lewison's book about the Beatles, you realise that they used to, when they were unknown, they used to take 2 buses across Liverpool to meet somebody who could play them a chord. That, you know, because there was no other way of doing it. Anyway, so recital, Dylan Records, and me and my mate Dave, who were kind of oiks from the second year or whatever, we went along because we basically thought this guy Bob Dylan was supposed to be groovy and so forth, because we'd heard Peter, Paul and Mary doing the songs.
Back then, you thought his name was pronounced Dylan.
Well, that's
right?
my
Dylan,
point.
yeah.
That's my point. My jaw dropped at the beginning when Richard Hughes said, "Right, welcome to the Bob Dylan, recital." Dylan, not Dylan. Surely, that gives you an idea of the kind of information blackout.
Yeah.
Of those times and how you had to grab at any bit of information you got, and so that was one of the first songs I heard and was first exposed to his extraordinary kind of vocal delivery and presence, which is still the thing I like most about him now, actually.
His vocal delivery.
Yeah. I think he's a singer. He's a singer. People forget that he's a singer. Far more important than anything else at all. And I was only reading the other day a very early piece, probably the New York Times or something. Somebody writes the sleeve notes on one of those early albums, and I think it's an extract from a New Yorker piece, It's Nat Hentoff, I think.
Right.
And he speaks to Joan Baez about him. And Joan Baez, I thought it was really interesting. She said this even in 1962, 63 or whatever. She said, but most of all, he's an incredible singer. And for Joan Baez, who was known for the kind of crystalline purity of her kind of operatic delivery,
Angelic
which
voice.
most people would have regarded as that's singing, they would have thought, what Bob Dylan does, that's not singing. Well, she recognised, boy, that is more singing than what I do. You know what I mean?
It's like, what's that in? Is it in Don't Look Back? No, it's in the document, I think, where he's being interviewed about his voice, and he's going, "I'm as good as."
No, it is in Don't Look Back.
Is it Don't Look Back? He's like, you gotta listen really hard, but I'm as good as that operatic singer.
I can hold my breath longer than Caruso.
Caruso, that's it.
Well,
you gotta listen really hard, but I'm as good
I
as
think
Caruso.
Jan Wenner has written some kind of pretty wacky stuff in his efforts to appease his rock star mates over the years, But whatever Bob Dylan record it was it whoever Grail Marcus wrote the review of Self Portrait, which opened with "What is this shit?"
Yeah.
And I think Jan Wenner wrote a kind of corrective, editorial 2 weeks later saying, and he said, "There's nobody who sings like Bob Dylan. Nobody even comes close." Which at the time I thought that's a bit much. Now I completely agree with it.
Yeah.
Completely agree with it.
Well, going back to just briefly, possibly, when the ship comes in, because we do want to sort of kind of cover that song. In my research, I found that he's only sung it 3 times in public. But what times? So the first time was at the Civil Rights March in Washington with Martin Luther. He was opening for Martin Luther King basically.
Feeling incredibly uncomfortable from what he said, and he looks at it, he's like, that shouldn't
But
be
what, it's extraordinary. The song hadn't come out yet. The album hadn't come out yet. Then he sang it at Carnegie Hall again before the album had come out. And then, that was in 63, October 63. Then fast forward to Live Aid.
The final one was Live Aid.
Did he
the
really
David
sing?
Hepworth.
Did he really sing it live?
Yeah.
Aid?
Did you not know that?
No, I
That's
didn't
the
know
David
that
Hepworth
all.
connection.
I'm the only person who hasn't watched any of the programming from Live Aid. This week, people keep
Did you
telling
not
me.
see the American, thing? But do you not know about the huge debacle? You must know.
Oh, well, yeah, I know about that. I know about him announcing to Ronnie Wood, just when they're going through the curtain, that they're going to sing Hollis Brown. And Ronnie Wood goes, Hollis Brown? That's cough medicine. Which I think is Ronnie slightly overplaying his
But you know what? It's on YouTube, and I watched it recently, and you guys, we were talking about it beforehand.
Yeah.
Personally, I think it's great.
Oh, God.
I think it's great. I do, because he's...
This is the man that chose Wiggle Wiggle as
I
the
think
first song to cover.
Ronnie is completely, and Keith are completely out of it, and Bob is completely out of it. But I think Bob sings it, talking about the voice, I think he sings it really well. He sings it partially as young Bob and partially as middle-aged Bob. And I actually think, I really enjoy, and I think it's a great piece of cinema. I would urge anyone to watch it.
I think the thing for me that's frustrating as a Dylan fan, but also makes Dylan what he is, it was the low point of his career, really, and it could have, this could have saved a major chance to really put himself on the world stage.
He's never going to do it.
He's never going to do it.
I know. And that's the one where he suggests or indeed invents Farm Aid.
You see, that is amazing.
that was
Which of the time goes so that's Hollis Brown, which is the story of a poor farmer, isn't it?
Got a lot of stick for that.
And he did
huge
get a lot
amounts
of
of
stick.
stick. He got nobody said anything good about that
Not
performance
at all.
in any way.
Not at all. And I can remember being in the we were in a club in the West End afterwards, watching the US feed.
Right.
And I have to tell you that the reactions of various members of the British music fraternity were less than generous.
Really?
Yes. I won't name names. But get off. What's going on here? But
if you watch it again. I honestly think I watched it without prejudice. I just found it on YouTube recently, and I thought, if he's that drunk and that stoned or whatever people say, I mean, it's a hell of a performance. I actually think it's quite brilliant.
Yeah, I don't think he's necessarily drunk or out of it. Just he has this wonderful ability to not be in step with whatever the occasion is.
Exactly.
He hasn't thought about it too much. He's just going to completely do it his own way.
And they'd clearly chosen him as the old voice of
they thought he was going to
the
sing
civil rights movement,
Times
and therefore sing Blowing in the Wind and sing The Times They Are Changing.
No, but the thing that struck me, I'll tell you why the song came to mind when you asked me to pick a song. In following Kerry talk about the nightmare of following world affairs and politics and so forth on the newspapers or the internet or whatever, and the world is still obsessed with Donald Trump, and there is kind of a feeling that when he goes, it will all be righted. And that's the idea that goes through when the ship comes in. It's the idea it's the old Jewish idea, I think, of Jubilee. You know what I mean? That all the wrongs will be righted, the mighty will be laid low, and the meek will be exalted, and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, they'll raise their hands, saying, we'll meet all your demands, but we'll shout from the bow, your days are numbered. That's the thing that really throws me about this song. It's very Dylan-esque. Like, they'll raise their hands, we'll meet all your demands, but we're going to kill them anyway.
Yeah.
That's the thing that
it's very MAGA, actually. That is.
It's right.
It's
We'll
all
take
about
no
revenge.
prisoners. It's about revenge.
It's about revenge. And
Yeah.
it's just the thing that struck me was, whatever comes after Donald Trump, it won't be back to business as
I
usual.
think it'll be more scary because it's probably going to be Vance, and
it'll be somebody a lot cleverer,
but with an ideology, which is a terrifying ideology.
But whatever it is,
I think it's going to be fine. I think like Pharaoh's tribe, they'll be drowned in the tide.
Like Goliath.
Like Goliath. They'll be, and also drowned. I mean, I love the language.
Well,
I love
that's why he's a singer. He's a singer.
That's why he's a poet.
No, come on. Poet.
He invents.
Poet can't say Goliath. Can't be done. You can go Goliath when you're singing it. Well, that's how he delivers it. That's where he wants the stress
but
to be.
you know, it works if you don't say Goliath. Like Pharaoh's tribe, they'll be drowned in the tide. You have to say drowned because those are the lyrics.
It's very
and
beat
like,
poety, drowned. very Kerouac.
You know, it's also struck me today that it's actually a bit of a children's song. And drowned, to me, sounds like a children's word. And in fact, the entire thing, the fishes will laugh. It's like a Dr. Seuss thing. And even the
swim
poetry
out of the bath.
or the lyrics is a bit like Dr. Seuss. They'll swim out of the path, or they'll swim out of the bath, and the seagulls will be smiling. It's kind of like a children's song. This is a much weirder song than it appears. Like, it's not like any of his protest songs, which are much darker. This one is kind of ridiculously sunny, which I find weird.
It's also very black and white, which I always find difficult when Dylan's like I will say about his Christian period. That's what really strikes me. It's like, oh God, this person who nothing's ever black and white is suddenly there's the damned and there's the saved.
We can do all that.
And but it's this song to me seems very kind of righteous, and we're the righteous, and these.
But I
these
think it's
dilemmas in a
deeper
way.
than
That's
that.
what appealed to 14-year-old me massively.
Of course, yeah.
And there was a feeling in the 60s that which runs through every bit of culture. You can catch it in everything from the Beatles' Hard Day's Night to the Forsyte Soccer or whatever, which is the idea that the old have been in charge too long and they will be swept away by this massive baby boom or whatever, which they kind of were,
Yeah.
And so that was very much part of that idea. That's what appealed to me about it. Just you wait. Just you wait till we have our hands on the levers of power. Of course, the irony is just you wait until the baby boomers elect Donald Trump all those years later. So I love it as a performance. I always think it's a fantastic example of just what an extraordinary performer he is. But it strikes me as kind of ironical at the moment. If you harbour that kind of feeling.
Speaking of at the moment, there's one stanza in here that I've underlined here because I think it's really prophetic. Like, I never really understood it. It's the least easy to understand. It's the one that goes, and the words that are used for to get the ship confused will not be understood as they're spoken. For the chains of the sea will have busted in the night.
Busted.
And we'll be buried at the bottom of the ocean. And it occurred to me, I thought, what the hell's he talking about? I didn't quite understand, because everything else is very specific. The mainsail shifts and the sun will respect every face on the deck. But the words that are used for to get the ship confused will not be understood as they're spoken sounds like fake news. It sounds like, or possibly breaking free of social media.
Yeah.
And the chains of the sea will be busted in the night. So the chains of social media will be ripped apart. They'll be busted in the night.
He was ahead of his time, wasn't
he?
he?
Well, I don't know what the hell is he talking
busted
about.
long before they were together.
Exactly, he invented busted. But what do you think about that? It's a weird.
I'm sure he would say you can take it to mean anything you want to.
But I'm not sure why he's. What the hell is he writing about?
It's strange.
In '63.
It is amazing, actually, when you read it there. Is to be reminded what a sustained sort of nautical metaphor it is. It goes all the way through. Because very often they start off with these things and they think, oh, hang it, verse 3.
Yeah.
We're off into something else altogether.
And also, he clearly doesn't know anything. I know nothing about boats. He knows about as much about boats as I do.
The chains of the sea. It sounds Shakespearean, doesn't it?
It does.
It's as you were saying, it's very Jewish. Like, there's so many Jewish references in this. The sea will be parted and all this.
Oh yeah,
stuff.
in the end, and Goliath and Pharaoh's
the fishermen
tribe.
in Galilee and all that. I mean,
all that stuff.
Boats are held by chains, aren't they?
We should talk. I think we should, for any listeners who don't know the song, we should talk about a bit of the context. So Joan Baez said in No Direction Home that this was essentially Dylan's response to not being given a room at a hotel because he looked too dishevelled and like a little ragamuffin. And she had to because she was known at the time and he wasn't yet.
See, that's
classic.
That's Bob Dylan.
And he was pissed off and he wrote this.
There's no separation. The big issues from the tiny little,
so
tiny
essentially,
little personal
this massive,
slight.
real.
You'll probably find that applies to most of the protest songs ever written. They're about people being denied access to a dining room at the Connaught Hotel. Because they were in gym shoes.
Yeah.
But I know that Joan Baez has said that, and I know that that's what happened. But to be more specific, what she said was they were driving to a gig. she'd booked the hotel in her name.
Right.
She said to Dylan, I just want to make sure they got the reservation. While I park the car, can you go in and just say, is there a reservation for Joan Baez?
For Mr. and Mrs. Smith.
So he goes in and says, is there, and he comes in, and he's Bob Dylan, he's been traveling, he's disheveled. He didn't, take very good care of himself in the early
He's
days.
always been scruffy,
He was
even
scruffy.
now he's
Like, he
scruffy.
didn't bathe, he didn't brush his teeth.
She always says didn't brush his teeth.
Yeah.
Terrible person.
So
to
he comes
duet
in and
with.
Joni Mitchell
comes
said
in
that.
and sort of
Joni,
says,
terrible
you
brat.
got a room for Joan Baez or what, man? And if I was the guy, the clerk at the desk, I'd go, Jesus, this guy's just walked in off the street. He wants to do something. He's stalking Joan Baez. No, we have no reservation for
In that name.
In that name. And then she comes in and she says, "Hi, I'm Joan Baez."
And she would know how to deal with the world.
Yeah.
Whereas
And
he didn't.
And she gets Bobby another room,
Yeah.
and he goes off and writes the song. So I don't really feel that he was necessarily slighted.
You see, does he get out there in your vision of that picture of that incident? What I want to know is, does he get out his enormous great typewriter? Because whenever we see those pictures, this huge great thing, it must have taken two strong men to take it in.
He's not carrying it himself, is he?
He couldn't carry it. And I think there's one thing that doesn't fit for me, because I always think he's so musical. How could you possibly sit at a typewriter and invent that stuff on a typewriter? You couldn't do it.
But he does. But he did do it.
Well,
we saw him doing it.
We saw him do it for the camera. Did we really see?
No, well, there was an interview with him in the last 10 or 20 years that I've read and seen where he talks about writing. And he says, you think I'm having a conversation with you now. I'm talking to you. But in the back of my mind, I'm writing a song that has absolutely nothing to do with this.
He'd be thinking of bits.
Now, okay, it could be bullshit. I can see the look on your face.
I just think Bob Dylan is the last person you want as a reliable source about anything Bob Dylan, essentially.
That is true.
I find that, so the source material for this, and it clearly, I've had a look into this, so it's believed to take inspiration from Jenny's song from Brecht's The Threepenny Opera. So Pirate Jenny dreams of the destruction of all her enemies by a mysterious ship, and Susie Rotolo later stated that her interest in Brecht was certainly an influence on him. I was working for the Circle in the Square Theatre and he came to listen all the time. He was very affected by the song that Lotte Lenya is known for, Pirate Jenny. I was working for this, So that's what it said, and it does. It seems like there are bits of that. So maybe
because I listened to the song, and you can see there's bits where they overlap. But something came to me the other day about this song, which is that it could be almost a piss take of protest songs. It's so ridiculously right on. We are so pure, and they are so evil.
It's the high point of that, isn't it?
But it's the high point of it. But it seems almost like it's too much. It's like, Bob, are you serious with this song?
Yeah. Well, yeah, okay.
I don't know. It just occurred to me.
The world was young, I think.
Also, it's very optimistic. And Dylan
that's
is
my
never
point.
this optimistic.
That's my point.
That's why
we'll all get swept away. Civil rights,
Yeah.
and so forth. It'll all be fine.
But what's that all? I mean, that's just weird.
And we've all lived long enough to see it's not.
Yeah.
Doesn't work. And he's lived long enough.
But
to
I'm
see
not
it
even
not.
sure I kind of believe it. I think it's almost taking the piss out of itself.
Well, I don't believe he believes it in a way, because I feel like the same with. I think it's a great song lyrically, but like The Times Are Changing, for instance, I never listened to it because it does feel like Dylan sat down and gone, "Oh, they'll fucking love this," It's that sort of vibe to me, and this is a different vibe, but it feels too perfect to be true. But I think it's Bob
the
Dylan
sands will
writing
roll out a
protest
carpet
song.
of gold for your weary toes to be a
Yeah.
touch, and the ship's wise men will remind you once again that the whole wide world is watching, which is a great phrase. It's both good and bad. I think it's both believes in itself and takes the piss out of itself, which is very.
But there also was
Dylan.
that feeling at that time that what we're saying and what we're doing has never been done before. Which I think excuses a certain amount for this. Because, I can remember people used to quote Bob Dylan, the man who sings, the President of the United States someday must have to stand naked. And people used to applaud.
Oh, yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
wow,
They
what a
probably still
thought.
recording,
What a thought. And nowadays you think, well, that's just a mundane thought, because everybody's had it a million times since. Well, nobody had at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was kind of new, you know. Your sons and your daughters are beyond your command, you know. That was a shock through society in the early 60s. Oh, really? There's going to be a turning round of things, which I think we very often discount in retrospect. But there's also that point about he sings all kinds of songs. And that's a song that gets a room going, isn't it?
Absolutely.
It's a rabble-rousing song.
Actually, you know, they sing it in The Complete Unknown. When they finally sit him down at the party.
Oh, yes.
He starts singing a bit of When the Ship Comes In. And Edward Norton comes in as Pete Seeger with his rather, naff banjo.
Right.
And so it does get the room going. And in fact, their version on the soundtrack, I think is really... I think Timothée Chalamet's whole journey, just sort of segueing into that a bit, was really interesting because he got into it as a great fucking part. Like he's finally going to break through and win the Oscar. I'm sure that was when they came to him or he came to them, whatever it was. Dylan's people I know had wanted to make a biopic for years, and I think he got into it, and the way any good actor does, did tons of research, and then I really believe that he became this huge Dylan fan.
I do believe that from seeing what he's talked about.
And it changed his life.
And it's actually the thing that, because I have issues with certain parts of his performance, but the guitar playing is so on point of Dylan's, this weird sort of crow-handed picking style that he had. It's very precise, it's interesting.
Yeah, and I think the song, I think it's interesting the songs that they chose. Obviously they had to choose all the Newport songs. But I thought it was really interesting when they were singing that. I thought we went to see that together when we were first. In fact, after we saw it was the time I turned to Dan and said, even though I'd only known him for like a week, do you want to do a podcast about Dylan?
Right. We had done a 3-hour podcast talking mostly about Bob Dylan on my podcast.
Yeah, his podcast, which is not about Bob Dylan,
but
we ended up talking about Bob Dylan the whole time. So I thought maybe I can do business with this guy. And we went to see a preview of Complete Unknown. And so it was interesting because we both, like I said to him, look, I might leave. I reserve the right to leave.
I was terrified. I thought,
we both thought it was going to be awful. And, we have reservations about it, and different points of view about it. But ultimately, we sat there afterwards. We thought, oh, yeah, we can do business with this film. Mm-hmm. I mean, what did you make of it?
I thought it was quite diverting. I think it's all part of estate planning, isn't it, really? They're doing it with the Beatles. They've done it with Elvis Presley, which is basically, this is the version of Bob Dylan that will go forward into the world when Bob Dylan is no longer here.
Yeah,
and I'm sure they can't wait for him no longer to be here. And we will sell this to, and when you make a film like that, you're aiming at people of 32, not people who remember it.
That's the interesting thing, isn't it? About a legendary musician is most valuable when they're dead.
Oh, undoubtedly.
So,
Well, it's like Colonel Tom Parker famously turned up at Graceland on the day that Elvis died overnight, and he was late getting to Graceland because he'd been to see the pressing plant and the merchandising company on his way. And the family were all sitting around distraught, and he said, this changes nothing. And he was right.
Yeah, of course he was.
The only thing that changed was volume. It got more popular.
Yeah. His
career is no longer moribund. It starts all over again. Mind you, that's when somebody dies at the age of, whatever Elvis was. Was he even
perfect?
40?
Yeah, no, he was a perfect age to die, wasn't it?
It was.
It's one thing I found very interesting reading your book is kind of a really, frank discussion about the realities of the music industry. Because obviously we're both actors, and the industry we're in is shit enough. But like I think the music industry is even more exploitative and even more.
The music industry, there's very little you can say about the music industry that is not true, in that you will find, who was it? I can't remember. Hunter Thompson said it's a shallow trench filled with alligators, whatever. But there's a bad side, something like that. Yeah. And you will find extraordinary cases of kind of exploitation. But you also find people immensely dedicated, and it's a hugely sentimental industry in lots of odd ways, But there's also the fact that, we, the public, we like the idea of dead stars. We really like the idea. Kurt Cobain never more popular than when he was dead.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that.
I
It
always-
suddenly becomes a stationary target, isn't it?
I always think Kurt Cobain's one of the ones. It would have been really sad in some ways if he'd carried on going, because I think the train was just going to slow down, because he was so fucked. It's one of those. So he almost, in an awful way, died at the right time.
I was on a canal boat the other day at a little reception to launch the reissue of the first Nick Drake album, listening to Nick Drake outtakes in a tunnel under London, in the quietest, darkest places. Very reverent people, 60 people on the boat, all listening. Thinking, this is just extraordinary. Why is this happening? Because he made 3 albums and died.
Yeah.
Had he made the 4th and 5th and 6th, were he still doing it today, we wouldn't like him half as much.
And we also love, with Nick Drake, for example, the fact that no one he'd not really got any exposure before he died.
No.
As well. I think we love that as a thing.
Oh,
It's
we like the
in
idea.
fact-
Well, because now the present can kind of congratulate itself on its
absolutely.
immense good taste
Yeah.
on picking up something that the past did not pick up on.
That's a very good point.
There's also something about when you're young. I mean, I know, by the way, I'm going to name check your book, which is, I think, just come out in paperback when this will go out.
All right, okay.
Hope I Get Old Before I Die.
Yeah.
All your books have great titles. I think that's kind of the best. And I'll just tell, when I was a kid, when I was a disaffected youth, that is, say, about 17, and had, finally discovered Bob Dylan and was finally doing, drugs and finally rebelling and hating everything. And it was... And
boomers,
yeah, exactly. And I remember writing on my parents had... I went out and hitchhiked around. I hitchhiked to New York for the summer, and I had to go back to go to university, but I knew I wasn't going to last there very long. And I remember writing... on my wall of the room that I was given in my parents' house, which I didn't want to be in anymore. Hope I die before I get old. Just like on the wall. It was like my message to everybody. Right. I was just, it's a great tagline. It's a great, when you're 17, being, at least back then, and I didn't even know what it meant. Because I didn't know what dying meant.
Oh, no.
I didn't understand the concept of death. No. I didn't understand the concept of death till I was about 40.
No.
That's just the way I roll.
Yeah.
But I think your book is really, it was really interesting because I've known you for some years now, David, and I've always thought, lovely guy, super smart, a little more cynical than I would, than I am. And it was actually this book, and I've read all your books, it was this book that I thought, oh, I understand. There's more in a way, because you understand the music business better than most people. And I thought, oh, I see now why he's so cynical, because this book sort of brought me up to speed on just... you say it's got its sentimental side. And I think there is something I'm sure Alan Klein was sentimental in his way.
Well,
there is something about monstrous people that, Donald Trump is sentimental. There's nothing really great about being sentimental. I mean, what I got out of your book was just how money-oriented and corrupt the music business was.
Oh, God, I don't think...
That's what I took.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, let me let you in a little secret.
Yeah.
All businesses are money-oriented.
Yeah, clearly.
Okay, let's
Clearly.
just...
Okay.
I know this may be shocking to some
I
people.
know. I don't
Your
understand the
local
concept
sweet
of death.
shop is money-oriented.
Okay.
Okay? And if it wasn't, it wouldn't last very long. I think the public are unsentimental, but like to think that they're sentimental, you know what I mean? They like the idea of buying things by dead people, They like the idea of paying fortunes to go and see their old heroes, many years later, long past their prime, They just
Do you think they like it? Bob Dylan tickets are going on sale tomorrow for his little bit of the UK tour, and we're going to try to go there. I don't want to pay 150 quid for those fucking
tell you
tickets.
what,
But we have to. Well, true.
don't.
True.
You do not have to do it, But people seem to have persuaded. I can remember, I've probably seen Bruce Springsteen more than I've seen anybody. And I've probably seen him about 25 times. And I can remember thinking this in the mid-90s. I've seen him 25 times, it's enough. I think I talk to people now, I've probably seen him 100 times.
Yeah, I know people.
And they will keep going for
the
as long
person
as
I get my Bruce Springsteen tickets from has seen him 98 times, and I went to see him this summer.
It's like football. It's turned into football.
I think the problem for me is, as you know, I'm 30, and
Oh my
all
God.
the people
I'm in the room with somebody.
Yeah.
all the musicians, most of the musicians I like, are either dead or in their 70s. So I'm going to see Bruce Springsteen. And I went to see Bob Dylan at Royal. It's only the fifth time I've seen Bob Dylan, and he's first time I saw him was 2017. So it's like it's
really fascinating. It fascinates me about all this because I feel born in 1950, so I can remember Elvis before he went in the army, roughly. Beatles, I was 13. Like a Rolling Stone, I was 15. Yeah. Woodstock, I was 19. Abbey Road, I was 19. 26, punk rock or whatever. I feel as if I've seen it all, and I've seen it go round again. And different people get on the bus at different stages, which absolutely fascinates me. The number of people I've spoken to in the last few years who love the Beatles, for instance, and the reason they like the Beatles is they used to like ELO. And then John Lennon died, and they thought, oh, John Lennon, was he in a group with the bloke from Wings? And then they kind of reassembled it. And I suppose that's the way it is. Whereas old kids like Carrie and myself, we carry the chronology of this in our heads. Because it happened, you remember the stage of life you were at or whatever. Yeah. People listen to music completely non-chronologically nowadays. My kids, they accept that anything you want to hear, you can hear it. And if I ask them to tell me whether, I don't know, Elvis Presley came before the Beatles, they would have difficulty telling.
See, I'm an old soul, as we've discussed, because I still listen to everything chronologically.
Oh,
okay. One of those.
But yes, you are unusual. You wouldn't be doing this Bob Dylan podcast.
Yeah. But I think just to say how lucky you guys are in that respect, because I don't think there's ever been.
Well, except we're old.
But artistically, I think the 60s and 70s, particularly in music, there's never been a period of time with that level of change and that level of nuance.
No, that's true, certainly. I mean, it's just
so much so that, as you say,
amazing.
It's just being repeated now.
And speaking of what you were, or rather, your attitude to the Stones is interesting to me, because we've been occasionally talking about the Instagram feed where the guy puts up songs about Mick Jagger singing about vegetables, where he's dubbed, which are absolutely brilliant and hilarious. But I because I came up with Mick Jagger, because I was lucky enough to see the Stones when they played Winnipeg in '65, and I'll never kind of forget that. So Mick Jagger to me is like this, almost not a friend, but he's this icon, but he's like my icon. Like I watched him get old. He's a fantasy friend, yes, exactly. But when people take the pit, like the guy who does it now, I think is probably, I don't know, in his late 20s, early 30s.
Yeah, it's my sort of age, I think.
Yeah, and he's kind of taking the piss. He's making him into a figure of fun. He kind of considers him a figure of fun.
To me,
Mick Jagger is.
He's not. He's everything.
You sort of tolerate Mick Jagger if you like the Stones.
Did you see the pictures? I mean, Mick Jagger, it never ceases being entertaining. Did you see the pictures of Sir Mick Jagger and Sir Elton John at the state banquet to welcome Macron at Windsor Castle?
No.
So, obviously, if you want to impress a visiting head of state, particularly a French one, you go, what do we do that they don't do? I'll tell you what, rock stars.
Yeah.
And then they ring up a couple of knighted rock stars who put on what Woodhouse would have called the old soup and fish and just turn up, and admire the paintings. And make small talk with the French ambassador or whatever. And it's just the sight of Mick Jagger in white tie and tails at the age of whatever Mick
80,
is.
Whatever.
He's 80-some, isn't he?
Yeah.
It is the ultimate sort of soft power we have as a nation, in a way. Our music and artists.
It certainly has been.
So it has been, and exactly. It's sort of dying out.
To me, the idea that Mick Jagger is purely... I mean, I have to go back to this, because I remember seeing Performance when it came out, and I'm a couple of years younger than you, David, so I think I snuck in. I was like 15 or something and used false ID to get in. And I remember seeing that film Performance, and it was like the most weird, dangerous, mind-blowing, dark thing. And I thought Mick Jagger was like the most dangerous, mind-blowing, dark persona. And he was going through his, let me please introduce myself, a man of wealth and taste. And he was not a figure of fun.
Yeah.
He was scary. And then, okay, he became a figure of fun. But I do remember when he wasn't, and I treasure
I've
that.
just seen clips of we were talking about this the other day, and I thought, actually, yeah, because early kind of live clips of, say, Jumpin' Jack Flash, he does look cool, and he does look like a great frontman. But now he's just like, hello, Glastonbury, ridiculous.
Well, except, you see, I think when people go and see those kind of acts, same thing applies with Bruce Springsteen, Neil Young, who was here the other day, I think what they're seeing in their heads is the old.
See, I
Yes.
think
The picture.
Yes.
The picture of Bruce Springsteen is the cover of Born to Run. That's what people still see in their heads. And that's 50 years ago.
he's still fucking great live, though, Springsteen.
Okay, but,
He's great.
that's what
Yeah.
they see.
Yeah, you're right.
And that's why Paul McCartney goes on stage and plays a Hofner violin bass and occasionally wears a Beatle collared jacket.
So he came on stage with Springsteen when I saw him in Liverpool.
It's obligatory
this
now.
summer. Yeah.
You can't get one without the other.
Yeah.
I remember I accidentally saw Paul McCartney. I was at this place it was Granary Square, King's Cross.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things, it was a summer night, and Damon Albarn, what I've never known how to pronounce his name, was touring with a bunch of African musicians.
Right.
And we just showed up. It was a beautiful summer night. We were way at the back, and my knees were killing me because they were just I'm sore. And I was sitting down, and I thought, oh, when do we get to leave? And Suzanne, my wife, said, the word in the crowd is that Paul McCartney has just walked on stage. And I'd never seen McCartney live. I never wanted to see McCartney live, with
Well, the amount of
post-Beatles.
time you've spent in Soho and you've never bumped into Paul
I've never
McCartney.
bumped into Paul. I've talked to people who have. But anyway, I jumped up. We were at the back, and I just saw the Hofner bass.
Yeah,
that's all I could
iconic.
see. It was brilliant.
He's got the
It was
hair,
fabulous.
he's got the collar, he's got the
Yeah,
Hofner bass.
but all I needed
He
to see was the
looks
Hofner
like-
bass,
He
you
looks
know?
like 1964,
yeah.
Now, here's a question. And so if you go to a social gathering, let's say you went to a grand social gathering, as a wedding or something, at a grand hotel in London, and somebody said to you, oh, Tom Cruise is here. So you're a bit impressed. And somebody says, no, hang on, Paul McCartney is here. The whole room goes like that. Now, if Bob Dylan walks in, is that bigger than Paul McCartney or not? Who is? And I think rock stars are really interesting of this. I've been in rooms with loads of rock stars, and they naturally defer to each other. There is a pecking order. If Liam Gallagher was there, he would wind it in a little bit.
Yeah, of course.
'Cause
Yeah.
seniority, it's like elderly cricketers or whatever,
So what is your point? Is your point
My
that
point
Bob
is,
Dylan?
who's biggest, Bob Dylan or Paul McCartney?
Well, what is your feeling on
My
that?
feeling, Paul McCartney. Actually.
Yeah, I think so. Although it's interesting seeing the clips of behind the scenes at Dylan's 30th anniversary concert, where you've got all these legends there, and they do seem very deferential.
To him,
and especially
definitely.
George Harrison, who loved. Dylan's
Definitely,
music
I
and stuff.
don't doubt.
But yeah, I especially, I have this with no one I know particularly likes Dylan of my age.
Right.
They're like, yeah, he's a good songwriter, fucking terrible voice. The same story all over. Yeah, exactly. My point exactly. But everyone knows.
You see, that's the thing
McCartney's
about
the legend.
McCartney.
But he's also British, so maybe it would change.
And he
in the
comes
States.
up, he comes up on the train from Peasmarsh in Sussex, and he comes on his own because he likes the idea of people recognising him.
Oh, yeah.
He likes the idea of waving to people.
I went to I got a free ticket from a friend of a friend to see the launch of his lyrics thing, lyrics book, right?
yeah.
So it was at the South Bank Centre,
Yeah.
and I was being interviewed by Samira Ahmed and the Paul Muldoon, and so they came on, but before it started, so I had tickets, one seat up in the gods, went by myself, and there was a very good-looking young woman and a very good-looking young man sitting beside me, like they're right in the corner. There were only like the 3 seats, and so I was earwigging with them, and the boy, they were both in their early 20s, said, So tell me about Paul McCartney. Like, I know he was in the Beatles, but like, and why are we here again? And she said, well, she was a receptionist at a little music studio, and this guy Paul McCartney had come in to do something in the music studio, and she said he was just so nice. Yeah. He was just so sweet, He said hello to everyone. And so I thought, and there were tickets available because of the music studio. So I thought, let's see something, what he was up to. She didn't know anything about him. She was just completely charmed by him, and that's why they were there. She wouldn't have said that about Bob Dylan. That's all I'm saying.
You wouldn't have said that about Bob Dylan. No.
I think as well with Bob Dylan sort of, I think he can blend into a crowd more so than Paul McCartney.
And he wants to.
When I interviewed him, he said I could disappear in a crowd.
Yeah.
Really?
He said that unbidden, I think. Yeah.
Tell us, David, like I know you've talked about it in the interview. Tell us whatever your greatest hits are. But you said you interviewed him twice?
Yeah, two consecutive nights at Madison Square Garden. Didn't get very much out of it.
Either night?
Well, listen, I could bore on about this forever. My theory about rock stars is you go to interview them. You don't really want to interview them. What you want to do is look at them. True. You want to be in a room, close quarters. Ideally, you want to be the person over to the right who just gets to look at them and go, oh my God, have you seen his shoes? Or have you seen how many sugars he takes? Or whatever. Yeah. It's all that really trivial stuff. And of course, when you go to interview somebody, you have to kind of pretend you're not looking at all that. And you have to pretend that it's casual and it's kind of business-like encounter.
Yeah.
Whereas at the same time, inside you, a little figure is dancing up and down going, oh my God! Yeah. That's Bob Dylan. Have you seen how much he looks like Bob Dylan? Yeah. And I've also always had this thing about really famous people. When you meet them, they always appear to have a head that's bigger than the rest of the body. And that's because you're really familiar with the facial features.
Of course.
And so they look like 1950s cigarette cards of footballers. There's
like a little bobblehead or
tiny bodies, huge head. This applies Mick Jagger, all these people, And you can't take your eyes off them. And you find it rather tiresome that you have to ask them any questions at all. And I was trying to make small talk, and he had a huge, great snoring dog at his feet. And
was that the Great Dane?
Was it the Great Dane? Yeah,
I
was going to
ask. Massive. Yeah. And I said, to make small talk, I said, what's the dog called? Small talk with Bob Dylan. That's ridiculous. And he said, he has no name. And I was about to launch into my next fruitless avenue of conversation when obviously a joke belatedly occurred to Bob Dylan. And he goes, oh no, he's called Late for Dinner. Because the old joke is call me anything you like don't ever call me late for dinner. Yeah. Hilarious, Bob.
That's very Bob Dylan.
That goes along with your, my girlfriend's a tennis umpire, love me, nothing to her, all that kind of stuff. He ought to be at the end of
the
pier.
That's good. That tennis one's good.
It's a perfectly good one. I think they're all good. There's something funny about Bob Dylan telling knock-knock jokes.
It was interesting. I was listening to your episode on Is It Rolling, Bob, and you said, I think every rock star or musician in general wants to make people believe that they don't give a fuck what anyone thinks. But few actually do. But he does. Like Morrissey, for instance, wants everyone to think he doesn't care. But he cares deeply.
Morrissey is, I'm leaving now. Yeah. I say I'm leaving.
Yeah, I'm leaving.
Have you all noticed?
Don't chase after me. I'm going. I'm going.
Bob Dylan not like that at all.
Yeah.
Genuinely not bothered. He's Bob Dylan, and he's been secure in being Bob Dylan since 1964. And it must be... by God, it must be odd being Bob Dylan, I was going to say earlier when we were talking about, rock stars in a room, I've walked into a room behind Mick Jagger. And I tell you, everybody should have that experience once in their lifetime, which is that everybody in the room stops. Everybody.
Yeah.
And all just swivel and all looking at one place. And that's a long time ago.
Yeah.
And that kind of fame belongs to very few people.
Yeah, you must have to get a sense of. I heard
they always have to just look back at it,
Yeah.
Well, that's why they end up wearing shades.
Yes, that's
I actually
true.
was in a room once where George Clooney walked in. It was actually a film set, and I was in the film, but he wasn't. But his production company was producing it, and so he'd come on the first day of shooting to kind of bless the film with his presence, and that's the first time and only time I've ever been in that situation, because we're all like, blah, blah, blah. They were setting up for the first shot, blah, blah, blah. Adrian Brody was playing the lead, and he was there. And I was playing, he was in the witness box, and I was the prosecutor. And so we're in this courtroom in Glasgow. But it was quite a big courtroom. And on the other side of the room, George Clooney walked in. And it was, like... everything stopped, and it was like, I'll never forget it. It was like, it all became like a dream. It was all moving in slow motion.
Well, Bob Dylan says this, doesn't he, in that documentary that was made round about the time that he was over here shooting Hearts of Fire. You know, there was a BBC Arena, wasn't there?
The interview. And
he said, I sometimes go past a little pub and I look in the window and it looks really nice. There's a little fire in there, and I'd like to go in there. But as soon as I go in there, it's not like that anymore.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm sure that's.
I think that's the thing with fame in general, but especially if you get that level of fame, you do open Pandora's box. Like, you don't have any control anymore, and that's terrifying.
But also, presumably, Bob Dylan, more than most, has a huge number of people thinking, if only I could get to talk to him, we would sort out something. You know what I mean? That's the weird thing about people's feelings about rock stars, and more him than anybody else. You know.
Yeah.
Speaking of talking to him, I'm still intrigued by this thing, because I didn't know you interviewed him on 2 successive nights. So was it because you didn't get anything the first night?
No, it was just I don't know why.
Or was it set up in advance? That's weird.
He was doing 2 shows with Tom Petty.
Right.
At Madison Square Garden. I don't know why it was 2, but I can't.
And you couldn't get anything out of them both nights.
Well, you know, you get the stuff. You know, a lot of it was. I was trying to get him to talk about Blind Willie McTell.
Right.
Yeah, I think it was on a bootleg at that stage.
Had it been released at that point?
I don't think it was public available. I can't remember.
Right.
And I was trying to get him. Thought this would be good. It's a classic case of interview when you go in thinking, I know what I'll do. No, because the golden rule is you listen to what people say, don't you? But anyway, I thought, well, I get him talking about the great kind of, and it is one of the things that fascinates me about Bob Dylan is the entire broad river of American popular song runs through Bob Dylan, like it runs through nobody else at all. And so get him talking about Blind Willie McTell and those guys, and he wasn't going that way at all. And I was floundering, trying to get him. And he said to me, do you know the McPeak family? And I didn't. I'd never heard of them at all. I said, no. And he just told me something about
They're all Northern Irish folkies.
Northern Irish folk.
Yeah. Shows I'm a folkie.
There you go.
You're going to talk to Bob Dylan.
No, but you know, that was a little bit of a reprimand. You know what I mean? That you Brits come here.
You don't even know your own.
You don't know your own. It's a fair point.
Yeah,
perfectly fair point.
Did he kind of, was he? I don't, because I think that I have a fear of meeting Bob Dylan, that he'll look at me with contempt or something.
Well, he does that with everybody.
Okay, so it was a bit like that.
Yeah, don't feel bad about
You're
that.
You're in good company.
Yeah.
No, and you know.
Well, have you seen him? Remember when the Stones did Like a Rolling Stone with Dylan?
Yeah.
And he looks over at Mick Jagger, and you can see him. You can literally see him thinking, he's fucking awful. Yeah. This guy's useless. The British Bad Boys.
They're groovy covers band, as they say.
Yeah.
Now, I shan't make a habit of quoting your own words back to you, but I did read your book, which I absolutely loved. But I was very interested in the chapter about Dylan. And you say, the poet laureate of rock and roll. This is a curious handle because it rather assumes that rock and roll must be in want of a poet laureate, when in fact it's about as necessary as a lead singer in a string quartet. Fair point in a way, but I think my point, because we're going to talk about kind of, is it poetry, is he a poet, blah, blah, blah. I think my point is the fact that the sense of a poet laureate of rock and roll kind of originated with Dylan. It's only in our consciousness because of Dylan. So whether we're in need of it or not, I think without him, that sort of Wordsworth of rock and roll title wouldn't exist. And from that, you kind of get Joni Mitchell and Neil Young and Cohen even. And I think, he sort of invented it. So even if it is a trope, do you know what I'm saying?
I know what you're saying, but I can remember from the 60s, you could always get your teachers talking about Bob Dylan because they thought, oh, that's proper. It's got words.
The English teachers, yeah.
It's got words. It's got narrative. It's got characters' names or whatever. We can do that alongside, I don't know, Robert Browning or whatever. Whereas they never did that about Chuck Berry or Smokey Robinson, who I think Bob Dylan said was the poet.
Was the greatest poet. Yeah.
Rock and roll, or whatever he called it, pop music, or whatever. And I've always associated this whole idea of Bob Dylan as a great poet with everything that I find tiresome about people's admiration of Bob Dylan, which is, forgetting, not hearing the kind of electricity of what he does, and forgetting that he's a performer, and thinking he's an inadequate singer. If only we could get somebody better to sing those songs, they would be better. No, they are never, literally never better than when he does them. Because he forms them at the time that he performs them. And then he goes away and mucks about with them for years afterwards. But that's a different issue.
But speaking of, say, Blind Willie McTell, which he famously didn't put out on the album it was recorded for. And it brings up the whole idea of bootlegs. And I think it was in your Bob Dylan chapter that you sort of said that they invented, him and his people invented the idea of taking songs that weren't good enough to make the original album and putting them on these things called, the bootleg series. And so my bone to pick is that, Dylan's discards aren't all brilliant, but so many of them are absolutely brilliant.
Well, they tend to be finished performances.
Yeah.
Which brings you back to the fact of how he records, which is we play it. Yeah. We all play it in the room.
Yeah.
I might be happy with it, I might not be happy with it. That is not how 95% of rock and roll records are made nowadays. They're pieced together. You don't have, even when George Martin put together the 3 Beatles anthologies sets, there weren't that many complete performances there because they tended to do something and go, no, it's not working, I'm going to try it again with the piano or whatever. Yeah. Whereas Bob Dylan, you get complete performances absolutely all the time. So he lends himself to that way of doing things more than anybody. And interestingly, on the way here today, I was trying to refresh my memory. I just quickly downloaded some best of the bootleg series. So I was listening to some things I knew, some things I'd never heard before. And it all sounds kind of a piece. And you're not going, oh, hang on, this was the late 90s, this was 1968. You're not zipping about. The technology hasn't changed massively. There is a desire animating all of them to make some kind of performance, you know what I mean? And many of them could be interchangeable in terms of their eras. I don't think that applies to many people at all.
No. I can only speak for myself as, I got into Bob Dylan and then immediately as soon as because I got obsessed with the sort of Freewheeling was the first album I listened to, I was like, God, that's good. But then I listened chronologically, and as I got to, by the time I'd got to the bootleg series 1 to 3, which is the first one, early 90s, I think it was released, I was obsessed with him. But then I listened to that and I thought, that was my first inkling of like, oh, he is something different. Because if you released some of the songs on that bootleg as a greatest hits, I think he'd still be considered one of the greats in popular music.
Yeah, most people just don't make records like that.
Yeah.
He's and you talk to people who've worked with him.
Yeah.
They all say the same thing. You turn up, you agree, and then he changes key. And you won't be told.
Yeah.
You'll just have to catch up. He's after something that he can hear. And it is amazing. I don't know anybody who records something like Blind Willie McTell and then not.
I know.
Because it was that Infidels. It was
Infidels, yeah.
So you Mark Knopfler there, and the record company, they must have said, "No, that's good," because ever since I don't know, ever since New Morning, I've always had the feeling that critics are waiting to hail the return of the dense, literary, gothic,
surrealistic.
That's what they want. And in the time of New Morning, it was Day of the Locusts was and that's the other thing about being as old as Kerry and I. We can remember the critical consensus at every point.
Yeah.
And how it
I've just read about it.
How it all refers back. Yeah. And I can, Kerry and I, we can't help it. We still regard New Morning as late period Bob Dylan. What is it, 1969 or something like that?
I think
No,
it's
it's
70.
It's 70.
Yeah.
70.
Yeah. So, it's,
I remember, we usually at some point say something personal and somewhat embarrassing on this podcast. That's our USP. So my New Morning personal anecdote is that I went through a period when I was in university, which was in 70, of shoplifting only records. And I was really getting, I shoplifted New Morning, and I shoplifted Cry of Love and Pearl. Those were those were the records of the time. And then
which one do you still listen to?
New Morning.
There you go.
Yeah. And I had to, basically I realized I really enjoyed the buzz of shoplifting. So I kind of went into the shoplifting business. And I said to all my friends, would you like a half-price copy of New Morning? Or Cry of Love, or Pearl, or whatever, there's Blood, Sweat, and Tears. There were a few also rans, but mostly it was like those three. And I just, I had my little shoplifting business.
Wow.
So that's when I think of New Morning, I have to think a little bit about that.
That must have been around the time of Abby Hoffman and Steal
It
This
was.
Book.
I tried to steal this book.
It was considered chic
Do
to
you know
steal
about
things
Steal This
briefly.
book?
No, is it some hippie thing? Or
It is.
Abby Hoffman.
Well, it's a yippie thing, which is different from a hippie thing.
Okay.
And
It's-
this is the time of the yippies.
No, it was.
What are the yippies?
The yippies
We're
were
a kind of
basically
aggressive hippie.
very.
Oh, right, okay.
I mean, Abby Hoffman and John Lennon. That new documentary, Jerry Rubin figures in it quite a lot. That new John
Good
and
film,
Yoko
that.
documentary. It's very interesting. And Jerry Rubin comes across as a complete self-obsessed dickhead. And there were the two strands of the yippie movement. They both invented the yippies, Abby Hoffman and Jerry Rubin. Jerry Rubin went off and became a hedge fund manager. And Abby Hoffman went underground, had plastic surgery, re-emerged, and became like a guidance counselor in an upstate
really?
New York. I mean, he was jailed. They planted coke on him. Anyway, it's a really interesting story. But the yippies were so much fun because they were hippies with serious politics. At least some of them. Jerry Rubin's wasn't that serious, but Abby Hoffman's
Abby
was.
Hoffman gets up at Woodstock before the Who
Yes.
and asks for them to tear the fences down and let everybody in. And Pete Townsend approaches him with his guitar, takes a swing at him with his guitar.
I think he knocked
says,
him
"Get
off.
off my
Yeah.
fucking stage." I've always liked that. I've always liked the idea that Pete Townsend had a proprietorial relationship with the stage. It was his.
Yeah, it was his. But anyway, Abby Hoffman wrote this book called Steal This
Steal
Book.
This Book.
And it was full of stuff like it had the personal...
good
personal.
marks
I've got it at home. I'll show you all my book.
marks.
I actually, I tried to steal this book, but they had it piled up. Like I was living down in Berkeley at the time. They had it all piled up by the cash register. You couldn't steal.
I was gonna say
you had
they
to
thought they had
pay
it
for
locked down,
you had to
even
pay
in
for
Berkeley.
Steal This Book.
Yeah.
So eventually, when I got to the UK, I wanted to have a copy of Steal This Book. So I again bought it a second time. Why am I talking about?
I can't remember
well,
what we got.
it wasn't like
Oh,
property
about
is theft.
shoplifting,
It was,
Bob
yeah, it
Dylan
was just
album.
I enjoyed shoplifting.
Yeah.
I just, in terms of the poetry thing, we won't go back to it for too long, but I think my only sort of, not even argument, is just saying that just because you put music behind it doesn't, and that's the form it was meant to take, doesn't mean that it doesn't have poetic value. So I would say, like, William Blake's Songs of Innocence and Experience. Robbie Burns used to go round and sing a lot of his poetry. There's songs in Shakespeare's plays. There's music been put to Shakespeare's lyrics. So I personally think he's about. And also, I remember I had to get the Norton Anthology of Poetry. That was on our reading list for drama school. We had loads of books we had to get. I got the Norton Anthology of Poetry, and I'd just gotten into Dylan, and it was the ballad section. And Boots of Spanish Leather was in there, as apparently, in terms of structure and stuff, the archetypal folk ballad. So
Well, okay.
You're not going to fight this.
No,
very
it's
hard.
fine. It's fine.
I just think, what does it add? For goodness sake, I mean, you find loads of things with Bob Dylan.
When we
you find
had-
lots of humour. You can have,
Yeah.
nobody ever gives him an award for comedy because he's been hilariously funny for all these years, or for the massive impact of his hairdo throughout his career.
Yeah.
Which he. More important than his contribution to poetry, his contribution to hairdressing. I'm serious.
No, seriously. And clothes.
Absolutely.
And
I heard
hats,
he
for
used
God's
to
sake.
use ouzo to tame his curls in the
really?
60s. Yeah, I read that. He used to use ouzo. So he must have smelt like a brewery.
Yeah.
No, the thing is, he's affected not just us as Bob Dylan fans, but the world, and because people would look at a picture of Bob Dylan and go, or at least I would anyway. It's okay to have hair like that.
I was looking at him
it's okay
the other
to dress
week. It was
like
the
that.
anniversary of him filming the video behind the Savoy, Subterranean Heavens and Blues, and that's just still astonishing.
Yeah, it is.
Because you just look at it and think, I was like 15 when I saw that or whatever, and you just thought, wow, that's a way to be. That's a way to walk. That's a way to hold yourself. That's a way through the world. That, and all it is a guy holding cards, throwing them, devil may care. That's his contribution to the world.
Yeah.
Never mind the poetry.
It's sort of the first music video, isn't it? in a
Oh
way,
yeah,
isn't it? Yeah.
And loads of it's social media, it's
Yeah.
Instagram,
Yeah.
it's the whole business of signalling something about yourself by doing something unexpected.
Yeah. So I'm guessing you think the Nobel Prize for Literature was a
Nonsense.
complete...
Well, I think it's very good way for Bob Dylan to get a huge check. And as my old late mate John Balder used to say, and John started the Telegraph, which was the kind of trailblazing Dylan fanzine in the 80s. He said, Bob Dylan always turns up for a prize, always turns up for a check. And as David Geffen famously said when he signed him, the Asylum for 2 records or whatever it was, he says, I've met millions of musicians and they're all interested in money, and Bob Dylan is no exception to that. And why should he be any exception? Where do we get off telling him he shouldn't be bothered about this? We're bothered about it, for crying out loud.
Do you know what I noticed that I shared with Kerry that I thought was funny the other day? On his website, you can buy sheet music of Bob Dylan stars. Like, you're literally selling sheet music for, he's not the... I love Bob Dylan, obviously, but it's sort of 4 or 5 chords at the most, generally, the songs.
Well, I don't know, the original sheet music famously used to be wrong.
Really?
Because, yes, it was always Whitmark, whoever was the publisher, would just get a guy in to transcribe piano chords. And they would always be wrong.
Yeah.
Whatever.
That's really interesting.
Whereas later, nowadays, you can go on YouTube and you'll find guitarists have absolutely worked out.
There's websites
They've
that are
really
Bob
worked
Dylan's.
out. Yeah.
On the website, which we've been consulting quite a lot, just because we're going through individual songs, is so full. The lyrics are so mad, like they're rarely correct.
He's changed,
really?
from the recording, but he does that live as well. He just changes everything. Yeah.
Well, it also draws your attention to the fact that, and I was listening to a tune on the way here today, that every third line is a placeholder. It's just, I park it there, I'll think of something better.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily chime with the theme, but that's a songwriter trying to get to the chorus, trying to work his way through the bridge. It's songs.
But song is poetry, because it's poetry too.
Well, all right. I will look forward to the Nobel Committee giving a posthumous award to Chuck Berry.
I'm just
But
going
they're
to.
not, are they?
No, but
because it's a bunch of academic bores trying to be hip. That's basically what it's all about.
And it was-
Can we get to play with the cool kids?
I think-
Why do we have to see her every year?
The
giving
king
out
wants
to
to meet Bob
Swedish
Dylan.
novelists that nobody's heard of. Can't we get a rock and roll star?
Yeah. I did quite like as well. You quoted Irvin Welsh on it in your book, and Irvin Welsh said, about Dylan's Nobel Prize, ill-conceived nostalgia award wrenched from the rancid prostates of senile gibbering hippies. So from myself, I'd like to say to you, Irvin Welsh, as a 30-year-old, where's the camera? There we are. You, Irvin Walsh, as a 30-year-old music fan, born long after the hippie movement had died out, definitely not CeeLo, though sometimes gibbering. Go and fuck yourself, Irvin Welsh. That's all I'll
Good.
say.
Let's end it there. Bye, Irvin.
That'll put him in his box.
That was Bob Dylan Approximately with Kerry Shale
And Daniel Crespin. Produced by Robin Guise.
and recorded at Lipsync Post, Soho, London.
For longer bonus episodes, join our Patreon feed.
And if you have a Bobsessive friend, please spread the word.
It ain't quite the end.
We'll just bid farewell till we meet again.